Hello, and welcome back to A Story Finally Told. Thank you for joining me again for this episode. I am sorry for the longer wait between episodes this time. In some ways, though, I'm really grateful for it. A lot of good things have happened since the last video. I've had several new people join the Facebook group, join the channel, and several of you have shared some story ideas, and those ideas are absolutely fascinating. I had a suggestion about a blind Celtic harpist, and then another involving a mysterious button box. Both of them immediately made me start asking questions, and that's exactly what this channel is about, finding those stories that have been waiting too long to be told. Thank you for the support. This little project just continues to surprise me. I've got new fuzzy mics, a cool little light source behind me, and one of the best gifts I've had since the last episode was the opportunity to spend a few days up in the Arizona's White Mountains with a group of young men. We stayed at a place called Buffalo Crossing. There was fishing, pine trees, cool mountain air, and something that's just become increasingly rare and beautiful: quiet. That's right. It was there that I finally got to read a book for a while, and it's been one that's been sitting on my desk. I've read pages here and there. It is Falls the Shadow by Sharon Penman. I talk about her a lot, don't I? And I've read this book before, probably 5 or 6 times over the years. This time, it was different. I thought I was just reading a historical novel next to the campfire. Instead, I found myself spending time with my brothers. Now, near the end of the book, Penman tells of the story of the Battle of Evesham. It kind of culminated in 1265 after Simon de Montfort and his supporters and followers challenged the authority of King Henry II. They hoped to give ordinary people a greater voice in government, definitely a thing worth fighting for. And at Evesham, they were trapped, surrounded, and ultimately destroyed by Henry's son Edward. Now, Simon was offered this chance to flee the battlefield and save himself. His men were willing to buy him that chance, but instead he stayed. According to the account that Penman shares, he says, "It is not for the soldier of Christ to be put to flight, but it is better to meet death honestly on the swords of your enemies." They formed ranks, they rode out, and they were slaughtered. One chronicler later wrote, I believe it was Robert of Gloucester, said, "Such was the murder of Evesham, for battle it was none." That line hits hard. What strikes me the most isn't simply the line or Simon's death, as tragic as it is, it's what happened afterward. Families were shattered. The sons that did survive, the men that did survive, they were left carrying grief, guilt, a burden of living when others did not. One of Simon's sons spent the rest of his life haunted by the belief that he could have arrived in time to save his father. As I sat there in the White Mountains reading those pages, thinking of the aftermath, I found myself thinking about my own brothers. Like Douglas, like Jacob, were gone far too early. I thought about how unfairly their stories ended. I thought about everything that might have been, that could have changed, the years that they never got, the conversations we never had, and the memories that should have happened but never did. The book was forgotten for a moment. I wasn't really reading anything anymore. I was spending time with them again. I was mourning them. And thank goodness, the boys were asleep still in their tents, which was definitely a good thing. I didn't want them to see their leader sitting next to the campfire looking like a complete mess. And again, as I sat there, some of the old guilt came back too. The simple question of why I was still here when they weren't. And this is where Jacob and Doug showed up. They reminded me a little bit of what I believe, of what I've taught for so many years. Their story continues through family, through their children, through friends, through memory, through heaven. It's one of the greatest gifts stories can give us. Now, I want to return to the Evesham section there to kind of connect what I love about the story. Now, the survivors of Simon's cause were branded as traitors and outlaws. They fled into the greenwoods, the forests, and the borderlands of England and Wales. And it's there that historians believe that stories like theirs helped shape the legends of Robin Hood. That idea has just been so fascinating for me over the years. Now, I've carried my own Robin Hood stories over the years. I had it organized here when I was doing the different takes of this video here over and over again. And so it's a little bit more disorganized even than when I started. But I have an excerpt that I'd actually like to read of my own writing here. Again, I've written chapters, filled journals, collected research, gotten a lot of feedback from other writers, lost my way so many times, but again, never forgotten it. And this story is one that's waiting very patiently. Um, I've got a portion of my journal, but I'm going to go ahead and cut to just an excerpt here in this one right here. In the morning of August 5th, in the year of our Lord 1265, blood dripped into a spring of water, staining its essence red with the blood of traitors and patriots. England's beloved sons, brothers, and fathers lay dead and dying across a once emerald hill outside the Abbey of Evesham. Mangled, bloody, and wet, their bodies awaited a Christian burial that some would not receive by the victor, Prince Edward. Like the tears of a doomed man, the rains of a storm had raged across the vale. Like the ranting of an angry god, lightning lit up the sky with its natural and daunting light, and its deafening thunder shook the ground. The storm was said to have reached its greatest intensity upon the brutal death of their defeated leader, Lord Simon de Montfort. Many of the wounded men were still being brought in from the fields by the Abbey's clergy and Evesham villagers, saving what men they could from the victorious and unmerciful wrath. Among the living was Robert of Locksley. He had entered triumphantly the previous day in the afternoon in the army led by Lord Simon. I'd love to keep reading here, so you're just going to have to hopefully stick with me in my channel there, and we'll get back to it again. Let's get back to the camping trip. One of my favorite moments of the trip happened later around the campfire. My son shared a message about fellowship, about caring and charity, and that part of discipleship. We told stories about our scariest times, our best times, our funniest times. I told them about Robin Hood a little bit, and then I shared some stories about my brothers there. I was just amazed by the maturity of these young men. They laughed with me. They got serious. We all listened to each other. It was just a beautiful moment around that campfire. I was reminded at that time that campfires have always been the places where stories survive. Thank goodness for campfires. And as I sat around the camp and later shared more stories with the young men and go to share stories with my own family next week when we go camping again, I'm beginning to realize that maybe the reason this story has stayed with me for so long isn't Robin Hood at all, isn't Simon, isn't my favorite novelist here. I think it's because these stories keep us company. They remind us of people that we love, that are around us, and people that have gone on before us. They let us remember. reminding you of Robin Hood there. This story has survived because someone just keeps telling the story again and again. New versions keep coming up there. Someone remembers, someone passes it on. And that's our responsibility as storytellers as well, to bear that story until it's ready to be shared with the right audience. So I'm going to ask you again, just like I did last episode, what story has stayed with you? I want to hear about it in the comments. I'd like you to reach out, anything that you'd like to do. But until next time, pen sharp, stories ready, and may those stories worth remembering finally be told. See you next time. Thank you.